The movie begins in a mythical kingdom called Lumborum, where we meet a girl named Ellie. Ellie is riding a winged cat, thoroughly enjoying flying in the sky with her friends. Suddenly, a flare shoots up from the royal palace into the sky, and Ellie realizes she has been summoned to the palace. We learn that Ellie is the only daughter of the king and queen of Lumborum. At that moment, her friends remind her about her 15th birthday celebration and ask if she will invite them to the palace like last year. However, Ellie informs them that she won't host a grand party this year, opting instead for a small celebration with just her parents. Although surprised by her decision, her friends still congratulate her on her birthday. When Ellie arrives at the royal palace, she is greeted at the door by Minister Niagara, who apologizes for interrupting her leisure time with the flare. She informs Ellie in front of the guards that her parents urgently need her. Ellie enters the palace, revealing a secret she and everyone in the palace have been hiding from the kingdom's people. Her parents have been turned into beasts. Ellie recounts that last year during her parents' journey to the forest, a strange vortex appeared, engulfing them and cursing them into beasts. Since then, the entire palace has been dealing with the chaos caused by the king and queen, who destroy everything in their path. Ministers Niagara and Bolivar have been unable to find a way to break the curse. Ellie describes her struggle in caring for her parents while simultaneously managing the kingdom's affairs so that the people do not notice their absence. She carves wooden statues of her parents to display with her on the palace balcony while greeting the citizens. Later, she descends alone to speak to them, expressing her sorrow over missing her parents. Despite this, Ellie insists that she still holds on to hope that they will return to their human forms. Ellie's thoughts are interrupted by a loud knock on the palace door. It turns out to be General Cardona, the army commander, who has waited an entire year for an audience with the king and queen. However, Bolivar and Niagara continue fabricating excuses to prevent Cardona from meeting the king and queen. This time, Bolivar tells her that the king and queen are busy drafting new laws or shuts the door in her face. But Cardona insists, saying, "I will return tomorrow, and I won't leave the palace doors until I meet the king and queen." Bolivar and Niagara feel anxious and ask Ellie what they should do. They warn her that revealing the truth about the king and queen to Cardona could result in their exile to a faraway place. Therefore, finding a solution to the king and queen's curse becomes an urgent matter. However, Ellie cannot think of a suitable solution and retreats to her room in tears. Suddenly, her elderly maid enters to inform her that the head of the postal office wishes to see her. The head enters cheerfully and delivers good news. The oracles of the sun and moon have responded to your letter. It is revealed that Ellie, having realized over the past year that no natural method could cure her parents, had sought help from two supernatural forces, the oracles of the sun and moon, powerful sorcerers who reside in the dark forest. Ellie had sent them a letter explaining her parents' plight and pleading for assistance. The postal head shows her the brave bird that carried the letter and successfully made it through the dark forest. However, the bird suddenly turns into a stone and drops to the ground. Saddened, the head informs Ellie that the bird might have been poisoned by the enchanted berries found in the dark forest. Ellie picks up the bird and removes the letter, but it crumbles in her hands. She comforts the head before he departs. After the head leaves, Ellie opens the letter and discovers that water must be added to reveal its contents. She places the letter on her desk and is about to pour water over it when the letter suddenly disappears. She asks her pet, Flank, if he ate it, as he has a habit of eating anything in sight. Flank denies it, but his lie is exposed when the contents of the letter, now wet, appear in his mouth. Suddenly, a hologram of the oracles of the sun and moon appears before Ellie. They express their sympathy for her plight and inform her that they are on their way to the palace. Ellie is overwhelmed with joy, as this means her parents might return to their human forms, a miracle coinciding with her birthday. Meanwhile, Bolivar and Niagara decide to take a different course of action after growing tired of their endless efforts to manage the chaos and destruction caused by the king and queen inside the palace. They make a bold decision to officially announce the death of the king and queen. Before the kingdom's people and following the mourning period, Bolivar and Niagara decide to announce Ellie's coronation as the new queen. This decision aims to restore order in the kingdom and allow them to fulfill their diplomatic roles in managing the country's affairs. However, Ellie suddenly intervenes, declaring that she has found a cure for her parents. She gathers everyone in the palace to meet the oracles of the sun and moon. To everyone's surprise, a large, terrifying frog enters the room. The frog opens its mouth, and the oracles emerge. Yet, the oracles are startled upon seeing the king and queen, leaving Ellie puzzled. The oracles explain that they thought Ellie's description of her parents as monsters was metaphorical, reflecting teenage angst and disagreements, and never expected them to be literal monsters. The situation takes a shocking turn when the king and queen attack the oracles, attempting to devour them. This forces the oracles to flee through a palace window. Ellie, deeply disappointed, yells at her parents, accusing them of destroying every effort she makes to help them. Later, she regrets her outburst and apologizes, knowing they do not understand her words. She offers them a piece of her birthday cake and sits in front of them, heartbroken. As she reminisces about her childhood with her parents, Ellie wanders the palace, recalling the joyful moments they shared. The next morning, Ellie wakes to loud commotion and realizes she forgot to lock the palace rooms the previous night. To her horror, her parents have escaped. The shock deepens when she sees them chasing the kingdom's citizens, spreading fear and panic. Cardona quickly mobilizes her forces, surrounding the king and queen to protect the people. Ellie rushes to intervene, standing in front of Cardona and revealing that the monsters are her parents. She attempts to calm them to prove her claim, but her parents, overwhelmed with rage, push her aside. The soldiers act swiftly, casting nets over the king and queen. That night, the kingdom's residents gathered in anger, refusing to allow the king and queen to remain among them, even after learning about their curse. In response, Niagara announces Ellie's coronation as the new queen. The citizens, who hold Ellie in great affection and respect, agree to the decision. Cardona enters to affirm the plan to exile the king and queen to a distant place, ensuring the safety of the kingdom and its people. Ellie is unable to oppose the decision. The next day, she stands contemplative, watching the guards prepare to transport her parents away. She looks for a way to save them from the soldiers, but she is surprised when she finds that Flank possesses the magical key from the oracles. Ellie uses the key to communicate with them and tells them what happened to her parents, asking for their help. The oracles explain that the key can help her transport her parents to the dark forest, where they may find a solution to the curse. Ellie moves quickly, using the key to transform the cages into fast carriages. She climbs into the carriage with Flank and escapes, but Niagara sees them and thinks the monsters have kidnapped Ellie and fled. Niagara screams and orders everyone to move to rescue her. Cardona and a large group of soldiers begins to chase them. At the gate, Cardona orders it closed, but Ellie asks Flank to use the key to find a solution, allowing him to keep the gate open. Flank uses the magic key to transform piles of hay into monsters that block the soldiers. Cardona climbs onto one of the winged cats and joins Niagara and Bolivar in the chase. During this, Bolivar is transferred into Flank's body by the magic, which shocks him. He asks Ellie to help him return to his own body, but she ignores him and forces him to use the key to open a path into the forest, where they find themselves entering the dark forest. Ellie reaches the oracle's house, hands them the key, and asks them how to break the curse. The oracles shock her by revealing that only her parents can break the curse, and they must reach the lake of light at the top of the mountain and dive into it. The oracles explain that the lights from the lake will reveal the way. Ellie thanks the oracles and begins her journey with her parents and flank toward the mountain's peak. During their journey, they see soldiers flying in the sky, and Ellie hastily hides with her parents inside a tree trunk. There, Ellie watches glowing circles flying in the air, which turn out to be birds filled with positive energy. Tension arises between the king and queen, and a fight breaks out, frightening the birds, who flee. Red lightning strikes from them, indicating anger and negative energy, which causes Ellie to react. She also releases lightning, and a vortex of black magic begins to approach, threatening to control her. The king and queen see this and try to save her, but their negative energy creates a barrier that prevents them from reaching her. Suddenly, they express feelings of love for Ellie, and positive energy circles appear again, causing the black magic vortex to vanish. When they emerged from the tree trunk, Ellie felt immense joy, thinking that her parents had regained their memories and remembered her. However, she was shocked when she discovered that they could speak without recovering their identity or memories. They only knew that Ellie had treated them with love throughout the past period. Ellie tried to clarify the situation, telling them that she was their daughter, and then began recounting their beautiful memories together while walking. The three of them continued walking until they reached a high plateau. Ellie sat and waited for the light that would guide her to the way leading to the lake of light, but she waited until nightfall without it appearing. She sat next to her parents, feeling sad, then suddenly asked if they remembered her name. She was surprised when her mother remembered her name and approached her for a hug. At that moment, a light appeared far ahead of them, so they continued on their way the following morning. During the journey, they reached an area filled with white sand. Ellie realized that Bolivar had left traces behind so that the soldiers, led by Cardona, could track them. Suddenly, the sand began to pull them down, but Ellie noticed that only the illuminated areas were solid and walkable, while the areas covered by clouds were deceptive. Ellie, along with her parents, thought of a way to cross, but a major argument broke out between the king and queen, causing a vortex of black magic to appear and spread darkness in the area. The sand then turned into a moving sea, swallowing anyone who stepped into it. When Cardona and her soldiers noticed what was happening, she ordered them to stop immediately. Suddenly, Ellie saw a small winged cat about to drown, while her parents were helpless to save it. Ellie asked her parents to help her rescue the cat, and the three of them cooperated, managing to save it at the last moment. As a result of this cooperation, the black magic vortex disappeared. Ellie returned the cat to her parents, but she was surprised when Cardona and her soldiers appeared. The king and queen teamed up with the winged cats to create a massive sandstorm that blinded the soldiers. When the storm ended, Cardona discovered that Ellie and her companions had disappeared. Meanwhile, Ellie and her group were hiding inside a mountain passage. After confirming that Cardona and her soldiers were far away, they resumed their journey, but Bolivar was saddened because he couldn't regain his natural form. Ellie tried to reassure him, assuring him that he would return to his original state once the king and queen returned to theirs first. Suddenly, Ellie noticed that her parents had disappeared. She started calling out to them, but there was no response. As Ellie searched for her parents, small animals of the same species as Flank appeared from burrows in the mountain. Ellie suggested to Bolivar that they communicate with them to find out where her parents were. The animals offered him a worm shaped like a lollipop and wanted him to eat it to prove that he was their friend and not a threat to their territory. Despite his hesitation, Bolivar had to eat the worm, which made the animals trust him and consider him a friend. The animals then guided Ellie and Bolivar to the home of the winged cats, where they found the king and queen. At the home, Ellie saw the little cats playing together and joined them, playing happily. When the king and queen saw the parents celebrating joyfully with their children, their memories fully returned. Ellie felt immense joy when she realized they remembered that she was their daughter, and she grabbed their hands and began jumping for joy. At that moment, the lake of light appeared before them on top of the mountain, so they all hurried towards it. When they reached the lake, Ellie and Bolivar descended and were amazed by its beauty. But when the king and queen approached the lake, it began to move away from them. Suddenly, they saw scenes from their past in the dark forest before they were cursed. They realized that the cause of what happened to them was their constant anger and continuous arguments. They then decided that it would be better for both them and Ellie to separate. When they told Ellie of their decision, she felt deeply saddened and accused them of being selfish. She told them that instead of trying to find a solution to restore their relationship, they chose to separate easily. She made it clear that they didn't understand her suffering, explaining that she had felt immense loneliness and despair because of their transformation into monsters. But she never lost hope and didn't let anger or frustration control her. Furthermore, she added that she had sacrificed so much for them and risked her life to take care of them, yet they decided to abandon her at the first sign of trouble. Ellie's anger became so intense that a vortex of black magic surrounded her. When her parents tried to save her, Cardona's soldiers captured them and locked them in cages. Bolivar turned to his animal friends from his species, and they cooperated, surrounding the soldiers and freeing the king and queen. Cardona and Niagara were shocked when they saw the king and queen speak and tell them that Ellie was in danger and that they needed to move quickly to save her. The king and queen hurried up the mountain. They used their powers to move the mountain's peak and directed the light from the lake toward the black magic vortex in which Ellie was trapped. Their plan worked, and the vortex disappeared. After that, the king and queen apologized to Ellie, admitting that they had wronged her and promised never to argue again. Ellie was overjoyed by their words and embraced them tightly. At that moment, the light from the lake surrounded them, breaking the curse, and the king and queen returned to their natural forms. The atmosphere was filled with joy as they embraced each other happily. A year later, Ellie was living a happy life, as her parents had decided to live in separate houses to avoid any conflicts. Suddenly, a flare shot into the sky from the royal palace, which disturbed Ellie, as she was called again during her time of rest. When she arrived at the palace, Niagara greeted her and apologized for launching the flare at that time. She told her that her parents wanted to see her for an important matter. When the palace doors opened, Ellie was surprised by a large celebration that her parents had prepared for her in celebration of her birthday. All her friends were invited, and even the soothsayers had come specifically to congratulate her, expressing their pride in what she had done for her parents. Her parents gave her a gift that she really liked and allowed her to go out with her friends and enjoy her time. Ellie felt immense joy, hugged them warmly, and then rode on the back of a winged cat, flying in the sky in the peak of happiness. The film ended with a happy conclusion.